always good for a surprise. For those having a little bit more patience, I will now talk about the summary, so you don't need to read it. Let's get started. So when we started the interview, I asked him since when he's interested in crypto and in which particular crypto. He answered that he is basically interested since the beginning of 2017, and mostly he stuck with XRP, through which he came to ILP, but he's basically interested in crypto in general. He then continued to explain basically what ILP, or specifically a protocol, is. And he would translate it to a common language. ILP or protocol, does not say anything about the content of the conversation held, only that both parties involved understand each other. And later on he explained that the end users do not even know how the conversion and routing within ILP takes place. The sender just sends value and the recipient receives value. What happens in between, they really don't care. He talked also about pathfinding, that ILP searches for the fastest and cheapest path, and we both concluded XRP seems well positioned in that way. He told that the ILP connectors will charge a small fee. That's basically their income for the service of the currency conversion they provide. Then he went on and talked about standards or norms in the internet, and that he only found about 3 successful items which did not adhere to a standard or norm and yet were quite successful. The GIF graphics format, BitTorrent and Bitcoin. I then continued and told him the only thing which roughly goes into the direction of standard or norm may be Hyperledger, because it's like a framework upon which you can build your own blockchains. And I then concluded my remark that for us XRP investors, basically just the Hyperledger Quilt component is interesting. Moino then continues to explain what Quilt actually is, and interestingly, Quilt, this I didn't know, Quilt is basically built in order to be able to connect in blockchains, and not just for transactions such as ILP, but for other stuff as well. So in the future they're planning functionality with which you could move smart contracts from one smart contract blockchain to another. So the ILP API from Quilt is basically just a subset of what Quilt eventually will be able to handle. I then asked him, referring to the average slide with ILP and XRP in the center of the financial world, if he has any idea about the progress, the status of the ILP infrastructure, and basically he denied, but he guesses that we're still at the early stages. He acknowledges that ILP reached production status, but most institutions seem to be still in the testing mode. We then basically both agreed that we both think that X-Rapid enabled exchanges may have to be contractually an ILP connector too. Side note to that, I pinned a tweet from the 19th of January to my Twitter profile where I state I think X-Rapid is an ILP connector. He concluded an ILP connector should have at least 2 or more connections to other cryptos or fiats, only then he can actually convert currencies, and when there is no conversion required, no connector or the work for the connector will be pretty simple. He thinks Binance and eToro X may be the next preferred X-Rapid exchanges. With ILP, I concluded you can convert currency. Simply issue a payment to yourself, send X and receive Y. Voila, converted. Tokenized stock may be sent via ILP. He, however, told that stock directly needs to be in some smart contract, and thus ILP would not be sufficient. We also both think that super global companies such as Uber, Amazon, Google, Apple may eventually offer ILP connectors because they have basically liquidity available in many countries, so they're basically well positioned to do that. Then I asked him if he can explain to me how ILP is used within browsers, because that's a topic which kind of still eluded me, because so far when you pay something on Amazon or wherever, you usually do a Visa or MasterCard payment, and he told that by using ILP basically you will not be required to go via the Visa channel anymore, and even Visa uses 2 or 3 additional payment service providers which help route the money in the back end, and by having ILP enabled directly in the browser, all those intermediaries are not required anymore. Then I asked him about exit strategy. In other videos I have been talking about that may be important once XRP really goes to a high price, that you continue checking in, I don't know, 3 months periods what's going on in the crypto space. So in case there is a crypto coming up which could replace XRP because it's 100 or 1,000 times faster and cheaper, that may be required that you get out of XRP soon or early enough. He, however, thinks that's not quite true, and that may be one of the reasons why Ripple is actually donating money to various universities in order to help research on blockchain and digital assets. And as XRP is basically just software, so Ripple may have their hands on very early in case of a new, faster and cheaper mechanism to reach consensus is available. And by that he basically thinks that XRP is really determined for to have a long-term future, and surely will not be replaced because it simply can be upgraded as it's just software. Finally, we also talked about how it may change the world, whereas my comments were more based on new models of income. I'm sure we will see that maybe in the future companies will pay you so they can bombard you with advertising, or you pay a small amount for not to receive advertising when you watch a film or see certain websites. For Moino, it was more important that the ILP and XRP will change the whole world because of increased GBT, because there is a law, I think it's called, I don't remember the term in Germany, but there is a macroeconomic theory that increasing the velocity of money, and Navin Gupta mentioned that in two of the videos I think I have in my Ripple playlist on YouTube, that by increasing the money from like by 2 or 3 days, you can increase the GDP by around 2 to 5%. Enjoy and thanks for your trust.